What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 3 best Path of Exile 2 builds in 2025. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both leveling and endgame. And then finally we will go over the passive tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what Atlas passive should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you are looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in this video's description or the pinned comment. This setup's main playstyle is built around putting up a frost wall and then blasting the enemies with infinite amount of fireballs. Cold exposure in the combination with the fire skills is very incredibly OP in the endgame, so this build works amazing on big groups of enemies where we simply use 2 skill combo and cover our entire screen with the projectiles that explode and do massive amounts of damage. On top of this, we are going to be using nodes like the scoring winds, constant gale, and many more to increase our cast speed and mana, so we could basically spam our frost walls and speed farm through every single content in the game. And then on top of this, for our defense we are going to be focusing on the energy shield and its recharge rate, so we could easily get over 15,000 shields and much more. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the sorceress and our ascendancy is the storm weaver. Then for the first skill we have the fireball with the support gems called the unleash, scatter shot, wild charts, rising tempest, and the control destruction. Then second we get the flame wall with the fortress, persistence, arcane tempo, and the fire mastery. Then next we get the frost wall with the icicle, spell cascade, and glaciation. Then next we have the frost bomb with the strip away and magnified effect. Next up we have the cast on freeze with the comet and impetus. Next we got the grim feast with the clarity. And finally for the last one we're using the hypothermia with the persistence and heightened curse. Most of the setup is structured around using the frost wall and the fireballs to delete enemies in seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this energy shield node, and then take all of these 3, so pure energy, rapid recharge, and the dampening shield. Next up let's go to the right and get this whole circle. Then now we want to go to the left side and get both of these as well, so the essence infusion and the exploit the elements. Then from here let's keep continuing our way up top, and on our way we want to get the overexposure and the climate change. And then from here we go to the right and first get the physics fragmentation, and then also the thin ice. And then from here we want to go back all the way from where we began and just unlock these defensive nodes in whatever order you prefer. Overall, there are 2 ways to approach spending points in the passive tree, so either way maximizing every single level and then continuously refunding your points, or perhaps just be a little bit less efficient, but focus on already the mid to end game build, which is exactly what we did. But in what way you do it is of course up to you, as long as you use the same exact path at your final version. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the scoring winds, as it doubles the effectiveness of our exposure applied by the frost bomb, which then scales even further with the passive tree and the strip away support gem. Then second we get the constant gale for the 10% more cast speed and 20% more mana regen rate. This build will often struggle with the mana, so any additional mana regeneration is always useful. Then next we get the strike twice, which now lets you apply 2 shock stacks to your enemies, and in combination with our 4th option, the Shaper of the Storms, your cold damage can now also apply shock. This unlocks a new way of scaling your damage by shocking and freezing the enemies at the same time, which makes this build very powerful in the late game. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we wanna first of all go to the right side, and then get all of these nodes, and then keep going down until you get this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. Then from here we circle back a little, and this time keep going up until we get a second keystone called the Unstable Energies. and then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this, we have even more passives, which in order you want to unlock them doesn't really matter, so again it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have the bosses. And then on top we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our bridge setup. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Chimming Staff with the Schedule of Power. And for more we want increased cold damage, then also increased spell damage and plus levels of all spell skills. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Vicar Tiara with the Energy Shield. And for bonus stats we need max Energy Shield, max mana, lightning resistance and fire resistance. Then for the chest we have the Expert Altar Robe with the Energy Shield. And for more we got the fastest start of the Energy Shield recharge. Then also the max Energy Shield, more to Spirit and Fire and Chaos resistance. Then for the belt we have the Linen Belt with the increased mana flask recovery. And for more we want to go with the max mana and life, and cold and fire resistance. Then for gloves we got the blue flame bracers with the armor and energy shield. And with them we also got the intelligence, fire and cold resistance. And 100% of our damage is now converted to cold. As I said previously, this is not required, as our build only uses the best of both worlds, so both the cold and fire damage, and it doesn't really matter if we 100% go into one or another, as long as we use the best skills that are associated with the element. So with that said, if you can't afford it or don't want to get the best in slot item, then you can go with any other similar gloves with a similar stats. Then for boots we are using the Expert Wrap Sandals with the Energy Shield, and for bonus stats we get increased movement speed, max life, lightning and fire resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Ruby Ring with the fire resistance, and for more we got max life, cold and lightning resistance. While then on the second one we have the Sapphire Ring with the cold resistance, and for more we got max life, max mana and lightning resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Stellar Amulet with more to all attributes, and for more we need more to Spirit, lightning and chaos resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So our main rotation and the highest DPS combo is to first of all place down our Frost Bomb in the flame wall under the enemies. Then now use Hypothermia. Then afterwards use the Frost Wall on top of the targets. Then now shoot the fireballs towards the location where you place the Frost Wall, and then from here just maintain the Flame Wall and the exposure from the Frost Bomb. In a quick summary, what we basically want to do is place the Frost with the Flame Wall to burn the enemy and buff our attacks, so then we use the Hypothermia for more buffs, and then from here we just stun and immobilize the enemies with the Frost Wall, while at the same time spamming the fireballs until the enemy is dead. But to be honest, like you can see from the gameplay, on pretty weak enemies all you need to do is just spam the fireball in the combination of any other spell, and because of our setup they will not stand a single chance against us. This setup's main focus is to scale Ignite from our attacks and target big enemy groups, to then set them on fire and explode. And one of the most powerful skills that we have in our arsenal is the Hammer of the Gods, which does incredible amount of single target damage with no element penalty. So Ignite makes the most out of this, by effectively extending the damage of this hit many times over, in order to destroy big targets like the bosses or tanky rare monsters. Ignite effect does damage based on the size of the hit that has been generated. And of course, like most melee builds, the armor explosion was nerfed. But as our main focus is on fire, so our particular setup was not impacted as much as other melee builds. And currently, this is by far the best warrior build in the game. If you are looking for a powerful single target and AoE fire build, then this is the one for you. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the warrior, and our ascendancy is the Titan. Then for the first skill we have the Hammer of the Gods with support gems such as the Heft, Fire Infusion and the Primal Armament. Then second we got the Leap Slam with the Jagged Ground, Holy Descent and Fire Exposure. Then next we got the Bone Shatter with the Impact Shockwave, Execute and Eternal Flame. Next we have the Perfect Strike with the Window of Opportunity, Martial Tempo and the Fire Penetration. Next up we have the Infernal Cry with Premeditation, Corrupting Cry and the Dazing Cry. Then for one of the last ones we got the Seismic Cry with just the Enraged War Cry. Next we have the Stampede with the Aftershock, Momentum and the Magnified Effect. Next up we also got the Herald of the Ash with Vitality, Clarity and the Fire Mastery. And finally for our last one we have the Overwhelming Presence with Cannibalism and the Herbalism. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guides. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this melee damage node. Then go like this until we get the brutal and the smash nodes. Then from here we want to go up top a bit, and then get this burn away. Now we go from where we left off and keep going until the burning strikes. Then now we again keep going like this until we get to this point, and then go down a bit to the beef node. And also you want to get all of these small nodes around them. Next up let's go back to the main path and keep going all the way to the end. And where the path splits, we first of all want to go to the right and take this big keystone called the Avatar of Fire. And also grab these two notable nodes called the Overheating Blow and the Fulmination. Next let's go back and this time take the left and unlock the second keystone called the Giant's Blood, which will enable us to wield a two-handed weapon in just one hand, so we can also use a shield on our offhand. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are really good, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, you just simply want to fulfill your attribute requirements for gear and the skill gems, and then after that spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more strength. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Colossal Capacity, then second get the Hulking Form, then next we want to get the Airbreaker, and then finally for our fourth Ascendancy select the Mysterious Lineage, to give ourselves a bit more defense. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. Our Fire Warrior build also is great at single target DPS, so we can also spend a bit points into the farming boss maps or the essences. So when we start we want to first of all get to this bottom right side like this, then from here we go like this until we get all the way to the keystone called the Deadly Evolution. And then when all of these passives are done, then now we go to the middle and now take the middle path and unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Expert Forge Maul with the critical chance and the weapon speed. And for bonus stats we want increased fire damage, increased physical damage, more accuracy, more strength, and leech percentages dealt of physical damage as mana. Next we also have the offhand called the Expert Brace Tower Shield. And for bonus stats we want increased block chance, more armor, and resistances like fire and cold. Then for helmet we have the Expert Soldier Great Helm with armor, and for more we want increased max life, more to armor, more strength and chaos resistance. Then for chest we have the Advanced Iron Cuirass with armor, and for more we need max life, more armor, lightning resistance and more to strength. Then for the belt we have the Plate Belt with armor, max life, increased even more armor and chaos resistance. Then for gloves we got the Expert Riveted Mitts with armor, and for more we need max life, increased armor and resistances like fire and lightning. Then for boots we're using the Expert Trim Greaves with armor, and for bonus stats we need as much increased movement speed as possible, and also more armor and resistances like cold and chaos. Then for our first ring we got the Prismatic Ring with plus percentage to all elemental resistances, and for bonus stats we need increased fire damage, percentage to all elemental resistances and cold resistance. While on the second one we got the Ruby Ring with fire resistance, and for more we want to go with max life, increased armor and chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Gold Amulet with increased rarity found of the items, and for extras we got more to spirit and more to strength. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap, and keep in mind that this is just a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So our first AoE rotation is pretty straightforward, and you want to start by using the Stampede into the pack of enemies. Then use the Bone Shatter to clear up remaining targets that are primed for a stun. You can also use the Leap Slam as a mobility skill, or to prime remaining enemies and then activate the Bone Shatter. Or then the second rotation is for bosses, and when fighting single targets, so you want to use the Perfect Strike to heavy stun them, Then once the boss is heavy stunned, then cast a War Cry, Seismic Cry, Hammer of the Gods, and then the Perfect Strike for massive amounts of damage. And then from here, just keep our shouts and the Perfect Cry up, until the Hammer of the Gods refresh is needed. And then from here, just rinse and repeat. This setup's main focus is to scale fire from our attacks, and target big enemy groups to then set them on fire and explode. We are going to be taking the advantage of seemingly limitless power scaling of the demon and then the massive damage of the fire skills. That will help us to decimate endgame content with ease. While leveling, we are going to be similar to other casters. So we shoot fire, things die, we level. However, the endgame is a different beast, because once we get our basic fire setup, we can then start all the maps in the demon form and kill enemies, while its effect ramps up to 70 to even 100 stacks plus, which then we disable the form and instantly reapply to the start demon form all over again, and this way we will be able to stay in the demon form forever, while also having insane amount of DPS stacks at the same time. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Witch, and our ascendancy is the Infernalist. Then for the first one we got the demon form with support gems such as the Vitality, Precision, Clarity, Ingenuity and the Cannibalism. Then second we got the Raging Spirits with the Fire Infusion, Feeding Frenzy and the Martial Tempo. Then next we got Fireball with a Scatter Shot, Fire Penetration, Arcane Surge and the Considered Casting. Next we have the Flame Wall with Inspiration, Arcane Tempo and Magnified Effect. Next up we have the Solar Orb with Elemental Discharge, Fire Exposure, Searing Flame and the Maim. Then for one of the last ones we got the Firestorm with Overabundance, Spell Echo, Hourglass and Inevitable Critical. Then next we have Cast on Ignite with Ember Facilate, Impetus, Energy Retention and Fire Mastery. And finally for the last one we got the Flammability with Vitality, Precision and Cannibalism. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you're interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guides. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this energy shield node. Then keep going like this until we get to the mana blessing. Then next we keep continuing moving forwards, and on our way grab this breath of fire and also the arcane blossom. Next up we want to go to the left and keep going until this circle, and then here we take this whole thing. Then next up we want to circle back a little, and from this point this time we move forwards until we get to the top, and then take left and we want to get all of these fire nodes. Then next up we again circle back a little, and this time take right and keep going until these nodes. So Ingenuity, Raw Mana and Arcane Intensity. Then next we want to get our 2 keystones, so first of all get the Eldritch Batter. And then once we have this one we go all the way to the left by following our previous path and keep going until we unlock the Mind over Matter. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of the nodes that we have are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, you just simply want to fulfill your attribute requirements for the gear and skill gems, and then after that spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more intelligence. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Demonic Possession, then second get the Master Darkness, then third get the Altered Flesh, and finally for the last one we want the Baydad's Gaze. Next up we have our Atlas passives, and the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we want to first of all get to this bottom left side like this. Then now keep going until we get to this Deadly Evolution keystone. Then from here keep going all the way to the right. Next we again want to start from the middle, and this time go to the top middle and get all of these passives. And then from here you get the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. On top of this we also have these other trees specifically for breaches, expeditions, rituals, delirium and etc. And for these the order that you select them doesn't really matter, as long as you follow this exact path. So this is what we have for the ritual, then we got the delirium, then next we got the bosses, and then also specifically we have the pinnacle bosses, then also we got the expeditions, and finally here we have for the breach. If you're looking for a full Atlas tree tutorial then just watch my beginner guide. Then next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Attuned Wand, which gives us mana drain, and for bonus stats we mainly want increased fire damage, increase spell damage or pretty much anything else that will increase our level or DPS of our spells. Next we also have our offhand, the Advanced Crystal Focus, with Energy Shield, and for more we need increased Mana Energy Shield, increased Energy Shield recharge rate, and fire resistance. Then for the helmet we have the Advanced Vicar Tiara with Energy Shield, and for more we need Max Life, increased Maximum Energy Shield, Chaos Resistance, and Life Regen per second. Then for the chest we have the Ghost Right with Energy Shield, and we mainly want to get this armor for the Chaos Resistance, and because our 50% of max life is now converted to the Energy Shield, and this will become very useful as we're using the Life Regen, and because of our Keystone setup, which I will explain in just a second. But as this is an endgame item to help you with the harder content, so this is not required, and you can get any other body armor, just make sure that you have good resistance, increased Energy Shield, and Life Regen on hit. Then for the belt we have the Utility Belt, with 20% quicker flask recovery, and for more we need max life, more charm slots, and life regen per every second. Then for gloves we got the Expert Sombri gloves with Energy Shield, and for more we want to gain life per every enemy hit, then also gain life per every enemy killed and the lightning resistance. Then for boots we're using the Expert Feathered Sandals with Energy Shield, and for more we need max life, increased movement speed, which is pretty much a requirement to get on every single boots, and then finally we have resistance like lightning and fire. Then for our rings we got 2 copies of the same one, so we're using the Amethyst ring with more percentage to chaos resistance, life regen per second, and fire resistance. This is for sure one of the best rings, as it's pretty hard to find any good items with a chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Lunar Amulet with max energy shield, max life, life regen per second, and cold resistance. No matter which gear you choose, you at least want to try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which would be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So our rotation is pretty straightforward. Start our rotation with a solar orb, which forms a huge AoE, which will spread the blind, maim, and the fire exposure, while being an easy way to trigger our elemental discharge as well. Then next we use the flammability for curse, and then use the flame wall to buff our next fire skills and spread our ignite. And then from here we just cast the firestorm and finish it off with the fireball, which will do massive amounts of damage while the rest of our spells are active. And on top of this, don't forget that our Ember Facilate from the cast on Ignite is always proccing in the background. So let me know what you think about this build in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, then you definitely don't want to miss my top 3 best builds video, where I showed even more powerful builds. So click the screen now and I'll see you in the next one.